Welcome back to Citizen Earned and the Second Amendment mini-series, episode 18, Who to Trust. This video is the fourth in the Second Amendment playlist and follows from episode 4 in the foundational playlist. Last episode I discussed the use case for the Second Amendment. In order to figure out how that use case applies to me as an individual, I have to figure out who the authority is in this field, since there's no further instructions that came with the Second Amendment. So just to review, the Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So we've covered a lot up until this point, and there's quite a bit more to cover. However, for me to figure out what I'm supposed to do with the Second Amendment on a daily basis, to be able to honor the citizen's task, to be able to deliver on my part of the promise of freedom listed in the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so to be able to answer that question, I had to decide which authority to trust. There's no certifying body for the Second Amendment, like the EPA for the environment or the FDA for food. Both of those are government agencies anyway, and this is concerning the Second Amendment, which is a right, something I and all U.S. citizens have despite whether the government wants us to have them or not the privilege, which is something that the government gives to me and us. So I can go to history, but we've kind of covered that already. And so I was thinking what other resources there might be to figure out how I need to apply the Second Amendment in my everyday life. Well, logic and common sense says that I should probably find the people with the most experience of carrying firearms in their everyday life, or when and how to use it for personal defense at home, etc., etc. And in that case, who would be better than the most elite members of the military? Of course, they're operating in the highest stakes, which is kind of similar to civilian life. Oftentimes they operate in places where it's not total war. Not everybody is an enemy, just like civilian life. There are good people and bad people, and some people that are threats and some people that are not threats. And as people who want to defend themselves, they're going to have to make that choice and be able to be very accurate and very good at defending against bad people versus making sure that the good people don't get injured. And so on down the line, law enforcement officers would have lots of experience as well. Now, I'm not going to look at military or law enforcement doctrine or look to the organizations themselves for information. I'm curious about the experiences and the knowledge that the individuals who belong to these organizations have. So it's not the government kind of extension of the military, the law enforcement. It's not that part that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the individual, because I am also an individual that wants to grow from their experience and knowledge and apply that to my life as well. Then after military and law enforcement, competition shooters have an awful lot to offer, because they are where military and law enforcement are very good and have lots of experience dealing with the situation and evaluating whether a person is a threat or not. Competition shooters offer a lot about the mechanics of operating the objects, the pistol or the rifle or the shotgun or whatever else. So I want to look to the competition shooters when it comes to mechanics and either increasing accuracy or decreasing time, I guess getting faster, or being able to shoot further at equipment and gear, because military and law enforcement are often issued gear and they don't have a preference. So they can't necessarily evaluate competitive market options. Whereas competitive shooters are kind of at the brink always with what's the best gear that's available. And so I'm going to look to competitive shooters for that aspect. And then lastly, kind of in my in my hierarchy or tier of experience, individuals with experience to learn about this stuff would be other armed citizens. There's a couple of channels on YouTube that analyze stabbings or assaults or robberies from security camera footage, and I watch some of those to kind of see what kind of situations I'm going to get into, and then of course looking to self-defense instructors, jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, Krav Maga, things like that, to be able to get the physical experience, so that I don't just have a cerebral understanding, but I also find the physical aspects of that. And of course that translates into firearm training and defensive firearm use, and fighting with a pistol and fighting with a rifle, and all of these various other trainings. So that's kind of my hierarchy. First, looking at individuals that are in the military and have operated at kind of the top tier environments, learning from their experiences, and then looking at law enforcement, especially like law enforcement's special operations like SWAT or other task forces that are purpose built for certain situations, and then regular law enforcement and the stuff that they have to deal with regularly, and lastly looking at armed citizens to see what kind of situations I'm most likely to get into to prepare for those. So that's going to get me the information that I need to be able to understand what I should do every day with what kind of tools and to what extent. Now, of course, I also have to understand or kind of generate my own rules or look at the rules of using firearms. And for those, I'm going to access, history books, federal laws and U.S. code, state laws, referred to as revised statutes, and various legal cases. Having then knowledge defined kind of from the most experience to the least experience, what am I likely to encounter side, and the what should I do on paper side, I can combine those and hopefully be most prepared going forward. The sources of information I'm not going to trust are sources that have a lack of experience, a lack of knowledge, a lack of information. So if that source does not specifically deal with threat turning into violence, or being able to react and defend myself and those around me properly with the appropriate amount of force, then I'm not going to look at that source. That's not an authority in this area. And so some people might disagree with me because they might have intense reactions to some of the things that I say. But just know the reason I've focused on that experience or that piece of knowledge or that writing or article or video is because there is authority there. I'm not trying to play to emotions here. I'm trying to understand the situation so that it can be a model to be applied for anyone else. And no model based off of an emotional reaction can be applied to any other person. Each person has their own emotional reactions, and they have to figure out their own situation. There's no way to configure a model or an example or any sort of system to apply to every person and the entire range of their emotional reactions. So I'm trying to leave emotion out of it and make something that can be rationally, reasonably, remember the root word of reason, reasonable is reason, applied to any person, all people. Okay, having said all of that, now knowing what my point of authority is, I then got into what does it mean to be a militia member? How do I take these points of authority and apply it to me actually being an armed citizen And am I a militia member, or so on and such forth? So, see you on the next episode.